Well, good morning. Welcome to Sunday School. We're glad that you're here for our anniversary celebration.
Had a great time in the gym. It was warm. It was reminiscent of all the weddings that we've spent in the gymnasium over the years. And sticking to our napkins and getting many extra glasses of water in the evening. But it was a wonderful time. Out of our friends, good to see them. Great to see you here this morning as we continue our thinking again of what God has done here for the last 50 years. We're going to begin our time by turning to number 2 in our supplemental book. Number 2 in our supplemental book. Give to our God and word praise, mercy, and truth. Are all His ways. Let's stand together as we sing. Stanza of number 2 in our supplement. Last stanza of number 2.
Let's pray together. Father, this morning as we gather, we do want to give praise to your name. We want to thank you for your working here at Bible Baptist Church over 50 years now. Lord, I thank you for your faithfulness to us. Thank you that you don't leave us, you don't forsake us. You finish what you've started in us at salvation. And Lord, as we meet today, I pray that you would encourage our hearts to live for you, that if there are areas where repentance and change is needed, that your Spirit would convict of sin, and that we would repent and seek your forgiveness and desire to grow by your grace. Lord, we look forward to the opportunity this morning to hear about the history of the church over those years. And Lord, I pray that it would just be a testimony to your greatness and goodness here. Lord, I pray that you'd also challenge us again from the truth of your word as to what we are to be as a church, that we would be a place that is dedicated to praising you, not for any other cause, but to praise you as people are reached and grown through the truth of your word. Lord, we do thank you again for Jesus. It is in his name I pray. Amen. You can be seated. We want to welcome each of you out this morning. We are going to, as I think many of you know, take the Sunday school hour here in a moment and look at the history of Bible Baptist Church over 50 years. Do want to say a word of thanks, though. I could say this morning later, but I figured I'd mention it to you now. To everybody who has helped get ready for church anniversary. I would start trying to name people, but there were so many. It really was a church effort, which I love. Whether it was, hey, we're having another work day, we got to clean up, construction's not done yet, or hey, can you make this food, or hey, can you help set up? Just so many different people involved. It was an encouragement to me as pastor to see you serving in our church, trying to bring glory to God, help one another. And I just want to say thank you to each of you who helped get us yesterday and today. It is good to have break this morning. I mentioned to you last night, I'm sure we're not praise better today. And I would hate for him to put a lot of work into it. And certainly wants to celebrate the church's anniversary as well. But we're going to give it some hour break. Good.
Good morning. If everybody asked me how I'm doing today, I think I owe you a little explanation about what I missed last night. We can't blame China. I know our president has brought up China a number of times for various reasons, but we can't blame China for this. I developed a kidney stone. So I was in the hospital. I went to the hospital yesterday, actually. After 24 hours of suffering a lot of pain in my side by side, kidney and also in the front. And after spending a little time there, it wasn't kidney stone. It's not China related, so my record of having back trips whole is still intact. But I understand you have suffered kidney stones. But I'm well today. We're willing to give this presentation. And thank you for your concern for me and for the questions and perhaps even some prayers for me through the night. It is indeed kind of a daunting task to look back over 50 years of a church and try to in some way summarize all that the Lord has done here. And I don't know that I'm the best equipped to do that, but we have been here for a number of years, Anita and I have been. We came to Bible Baptist Church in the summer of 1977. So we only have 40 years here, and some of you I know have a lot longer than that. But God has given us the privilege of being part of Bible Baptist Church for all those years, and we so much appreciate what the Lord has done here. And I know there are many here that have spent a lot of years at Bible Baptist Church as well. I'm going to do something, maybe you'll hate me for this, I hope you won't, but I'm going to ask you all, if you're able to please stand up. Okay. So if you came to Bible Baptist Church within the past 5 years, 2012 to 2017, you may sit down. And for the young people, it's whenever you were born into the church, has been when you first came here. Okay, so these people have all been here longer than 5 years. If you came to Bible Baptist Church within the past 10 years, 2007 to 2017, you may sit down. You see where I'm going with this, right? Okay. If you came, now we're going to take a bigger jump. If you came to Bible Baptist Church within the past 20 years, from 1997 to 2017, please sit down. Notice there's still a lot of people standing, 20 years or more. If you came to Bible Baptist Church within the past 30 years, 1987 to 2017, please sit down. A lot of people still standing. And the last one, if you came to Bible Baptist Church within the past 40 years, 1977 to 2017, please sit down. Okay, look around. There are a lot of people standing who've been here more than 40 years. I'm not going to make any more cutoffs, but so praise the Lord for your faithfulness to Bible Baptist Church through these years. Okay, you can all sit down now. Thank you. So you don't hate me too much for doing that, right? I'm sorry I missed last night. I understand Pastor Griffith went through the history, a little bit of the history of Bible Baptist Church back to the early days. And of course, I wasn't here during the early days, so I'm going off of notes and photographs I found and things like that to try to bring this summary together. So if I say something wrong, we're a little bit more casual in Sunday school. Shout out, that's not right, or fill in the blank if I say something that's incorrect. I want to make sure I give an accurate history of Bible Baptist Church. But I like to start in the book of Deuteronomy. Why do we do this? Why are we looking back? Certainly the younger folks listen to older folks like me and say, hey, always talking about the past and the good old days, and let's get on with it. I think there are good reasons for us to look back. Deuteronomy chapter 6, in the Lord speaking about the nation of Israel and to the nation of Israel, is a good reason for why we look back. Deuteronomy chapter 6, and beginning in verse 10. And it shall be, when the Lord thy God shall have brought thee into the land which he sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities which thou buildest not, and houses full of all good things which thou fillest not, and wells digged which thou diggest not, vineyards and olive trees which thou plantest not. When thou shalt have eaten and be full, then beware lest thou forget the Lord, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. This was the warning to the children of Israel, to these subsequent generations, that they not, primarily to the generation that was going to be raising up the next generation, make sure you remind those that are coming after you of the blessings of God. Because they're going to be born into homes that are already built. They're going to be drinking from wells that were already digged, had already been digged. They're going to be eating grapes off of vineyards that have already been planted. And they're just going to assume those things have always been there. But I want you to remind them that God provided those things. God did all of that. And that's, I guess, a message to especially those that haven't been here as long as some others have been. You walk into a beautiful facility like this, and of course the Lord very recently has enabled us to upgrade our facilities, including the elevator. But someone just walks into all this, sees the property here, the gymnasium, the soccer field, and everything else, and just assumes that this is it. This is what Bible Baptist Church is. But we need to remember how God has, through the years, in sometimes miraculous ways, provided for us, provided for property, provided for funds, provided all the things that we needed to get to where we are today. And that's what we want to look at here today. And that warning was given to the Israelites. We go to the book of Judges, chapter 2. Judges chapter 2 and verse 10. We see in verse 8 that Joshua died, and all those that were a part of that generation died. And Judges chapter 2 and verse 10, and also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers. And there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. So they failed. God warned them to make sure you tell this next generation about God, all that he had done for them. And there were some really spectacular things that they could report on that God had done for them, but they failed. And another generation, imagine that, another generation grew up that didn't know God, didn't know the works that God had done. So we want to look back just for a brief time here this morning during the Sunday school hour at all that God has done here at Bible Baptist Church. As probably was mentioned last night, I don't want to keep saying this, but the first service was on January 8th, 1967. 8 believers met at the home of Raymond and Becky Craig. By the way, that's our first slide. I don't have the ability to click here, so I'm going to have to point or yell or something at Greg Weldon up there to advance our pictures. And I'll have to turn around from time to time to make sure I know where we are. So please forgive the informality of that. But so 8 believers present at the home of Raymond and Becky Craig Sr. There were 5 members. The first members, 11 of them, were present during the first business meeting, February 15th of that same year. So this is where, I think that's the John Knox house. Does that look familiar to anybody that goes way back? Okay. So again, I'm going through old pictures and trying to make sure I make sense of all this. But so this is the John Knox Bible Institute, and that's, other than the home of the Craigs, that's where the Bible Baptist Church first met. There were 22 charter members. That should be the next slide. And I'll leave some of these slides up there just for a minute or two so you can read through it and see the names of all those who were charter members. And you see some familiar names there, some people that you know very well and are still part of our church. Is Army here today? He's not here this morning? Okay. Obviously very much a part of the start of Bible Baptist Church. Go to the next picture. Who does that young girl look like? Looks like her daughter, doesn't it? To me it does anyway. I don't know. So there you see the And you'll see some old, we'll be chuckling a lot, I think, at some of the older pictures we look at of all of us as we looked maybe 30, 40 years ago. But that's the DiArcangelo family. The next one would be Sue Speaker and her family. The next, Joyce and Pamela Bagnall. They're part of the original charter members. And I think one more, Lou Bagnall and his family were part of the charter members. The first deacons were Lou Bagnall and Fred Wimmer. Most of us probably don't remember Lou Bagnall, but a lot of us remember Fred Wimmer. So he's with the Lord now, of course. So that was January of 1967. First service, charter members were listed, and the first business meeting took place. In the summer and fall of that year, Bible Baptist Church in June was incorporated in the state of Pennsylvania under the Constitution, Charter, and Articles of Faith, which still exist today. Now, we have made some, I'll say, relatively minor modifications to our Constitution, basically because of the times in which we're in, gender equality and things of all that nature that we've had to deal with. But basically, we have remained the same under the Constitution that was established back in 1967. October 4th, this man and his family were called to be, first of all, full-time pulpit supply. I think they're one child short on that particular picture, but that's some of these old-time pictures I got out of the I think it was Lois Buchanan's 1972, 1973 directory that had been put together. So these go back quite a few years. So Alan Griffith was called to be full-time pulpit supply. In the fall of that year, Army formed the first choir. I'll let that one up there for a couple minutes, at least for half a minute anyway, so you can look at the picture and see if you can pick out any of those people. I see Sue Speaker. I see Dick Arnold. I see Pastor Griffith, Fred Federoff, Rich Ainge, Edna Eggenstaffer, Barb Silcox, Edna Brown, Jackie Hugel, Barb Mason. Probably missing somebody, but most of those folks aren't here anymore. I mean, they haven't all passed away, but they're not here at Bible Baptist Church anymore. But that was the first choir that was formed under Army. So that's 1967. 1968, in January of that year, the congregation voted to purchase a piece of property, including a small house on Paoli Pike, and that's when we started acquiring property here at this particular location. The average Sunday school attendance that year was 70. That's pretty significant for early in the church's history to have 70 people in attended Sunday school. That was a pretty significant number, I believe. In February of 1969, Alan Griffith was ordained as pastor. In May of 1969, Alan Griffith was called to be the pastor of Bible Baptist Church. That year, if you look in your bulletins and you see the requirement, the monthly requirement is, the weekly requirement, the budget is $15,410. That's what we require weekly to meet our budget needs. If you go to the next slide, a little bit hard to read, but the annual budget for the year was $12,000. Whole year, $12,000. And anyway, so 1970, the third location, briefly they went to Westchester YMCA. I don't think that was a very long stay at that particular location, but they went there. Also in 1970, we had groundbreaking for the first building, which you see up there. And December 6th, the first service was held in that new building. Also that year, the next day, December 7th, the parsonage back here where the Ballards live was destroyed by a fire. So celebration on December 6th, the first service held in the new building, which is next door. And December 7th, the parsonage was destroyed by fire. A mobile home became their temporary housing on the property. Next picture is, that's the first building. That's where the services were first held. So first service held in that new building. Next day, parsonage destroyed by fire. So just imagine the emotions of the congregation at that time. You know, rejoicing at what God had done, and, well, count all things joy, rejoicing as you're able, as the Lord, no loss of life in that fire, but loss of possessions, loss of the home. And I don't know if it caused people to wonder, is God displeased with us, or how people might have viewed that, or is God testing us? Is God teaching us something? But that was what happened the next day. Fast forward a little bit to 1972, and we take on a missionary to Japan, Martha Cochran. That was the oldest card I could find. I tend to keep those things. I don't know if that's her first missionary card or not, but that's the oldest one that I had, of Barbara Mason, missionary to Japan. There are other missionaries that were taken on very early by Bible Baptist Church. One was John and Willie Mae Kennedy. You may recall him from some of the old timers. The Golans, the Ambachers. Harry Ambacher might have been the first missionary. I'm not certain about that, but he might have been the first missionary that we took on, missionary to Japan. Yep, first missionary, okay. Larry Golan was to Bangladesh. I'm sorry. Hong Kong, that's right. Hong Kong, that's correct. And the Golans were in Bangladesh? I
think they were in India.
Jaipur foot. Developed an artificial foot that was very well received. So those are some early missionaries that we took on. January of that year, our Awana program began. There you see Mrs. D again as part of the Awana, and you see some other familiar faces up there as well. We'll leave that for just a second so you can look at those familiar faces. And speaking of familiar faces, here come two more. Everybody recognize Don Waterbury and Jimmy Murray? Oh, they were so young, yes, indeed. So I'm not sure this picture was taken that first year, but it's part of the Awana program, obviously. In April of that year, the new parsonage was rebuilt. That's where the Ballards live now. Was complete, and the Griffiths were able to move in. Also in April of that year, the congregation voted to start Westchester Christian School in September. So a lot was taking place. A lot was happening in this early church, this young church that was beginning to grow on this, didn't have all this property at that particular time, but beginning to grow here on Paoli Pike. Yes? Oh, it wasn't way back there. Oh, okay. Didn't realize that. Now that was part of the purchase. When we purchased the property, that house was on it. And Pastor moved in there. Okay. Didn't realize that. Thank you. Any other shout-outs, we're welcome for them. We want to fill in all the blanks here. And from Terry as well. Thank you. Started Westchester Christian School. In 1973, I don't remember this particular, of course we weren't here, that's why. Westchester Christian School temporarily moved to the Westchester YMCA due to a township matter, and I assume it had to do over the ability to have a school on this property. It might have been designated residential, I'm not sure what the details were. Yes?
That was the first year of school in 72 that they had.
Oh, in 72, okay. Somebody that was here at the beginning. Okay. The congregation grew to about 120 people. Now I've got 5 pictures here of some of those from the 1972, 1973. Lois Buchanan. Is Lois here this morning? She knew I was going to do this probably. Okay. Next one. Bert Mason family. Memories, huh? Next. I know the Murrays are here. I know he's here. Richard. He looks about the same, doesn't he? Just about. Hey, tell me about it. Rogers family. Is Nancy here? Okay, here she is. Very good. So those are some of the early families that were part of the Bible Baptist Church way back then. In 1974, it was decided to construct a multi-purpose building that would serve as a gym and classrooms. And we'll show you a picture of that in a second, but it's the one right across the parking lot, which is now the elementary building. 1975, Pastor Griffith began the Would You Believe series. We've got one of the, just an example of it. And that ran for a number of years. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but every Wednesday in the Daily Local, there was an article from Pastor Griffith hitting a number of issues, a number of not just current political issues, if you will, but biblical issues, and really challenging people on it. Who knows what The Lord knows, but we don't know what sort of benefit that might have had in so many hearts and so many lives across this area. Maybe we'll only find out in eternity what God did with that, but that was a great outreach into the community of the Would You Believe. April 23rd, groundbreaking for the multi-purpose building took place. And we'll take a picture of that. That, of course, is the multi-purpose building that now exists over there. When that was first built, it was just, it's not what you see today, of course. Right now, there are classrooms in it. It was just take the classrooms out, take the second floor out, first 4 classrooms, except at the very end, there was a nursery there, I believe, and it was just a large gymnasium. And we would set up chairs, take down chairs, and have services there. Take down chairs because the school had to operate through the course of the week, and then set up chairs on Sunday for services. In June of 1975, 3.5 acres between the current property and Airport Road was purchased. That's to be the lower parking lot. So God provided as we were able to consume it. You know, if God had said, you know, if when we first came to this location, somehow all this acreage would have been available, how could that small community of believers have been able to absorb all that, to buy all that? Couldn't. But as we were able, as a church, to purchase these things, and as God provided funds, in some cases, I think of Morris Holman. That's a name that some of you might remember. As I recall, he loaned the church a huge amount of money to be able to do the things that we did. And I don't know if he was a believer. He certainly wasn't part of the church, but he just had a heart for us and was very generous to us. So as we were able, the Lord opened doors of opportunity to purchase that. We didn't, at the time, I don't know that we knew exactly how we would use the property, but we were here, and we were looking to expand, and God provided that corner lot for us, which turned out to be our parking lot to this day. The multi-purpose building was completed and services commenced. Every week, chairs had to be set up and taken down to accommodate First Church and then the school. We remember those days, don't we? Even in the gym later on, setting up chairs, taking down chairs. Guys take their coats off at the end of the service at night and do all that work. But it was a good time. It was, you get a little bit comfortable sometimes just coming into padded pews, which don't feel as soft as when we first bought them. But padded pews and just the comfort of air conditioning, which we didn't have back in those days. See, here I go again, being an old guy, talking about the good old days, right? But most of you remember that as well. Some of you do as well. So the multi-purpose building was completed. We started services over there. Later, alterations were made to that same building, as I mentioned, to provide offices and additional classrooms. I'm sorry, the original sanctuary right next door here that we looked at earlier, that was then modified. When you walk in there, you see office buildings or offices. That wasn't there. Take the offices out, just imagine just the walls there, and that's where we had the first services on this site. Now, of course, it's the office area. In October, the first issue of Christian Sailing. We had several editions of different publications that were put out. The first one was called Christian Sailing, and it was done, looked like it was done on mimeograph paper, you know, the light blue color. I tried to actually make a copy of that, it didn't show up. So I do have an original version of it. But the first issue of Christian Sailing. In November, the first issue of Bible Baptist Banner. I think I have a picture of that. Can't read it, but that's what it looked like. And it was just a publication for our people. I'm not sure how widespread the distribution was, but just articles about the church and things of that nature. So I think there's one more picture. Bible Message, that was another publication that was sent out from Bible Baptist Church, just to encourage people, to challenge people, to present the gospel in any way that we could reach the community. So think about now the growing outreaches, the Christian School, the Would You Believe articles, these articles that are going out are ways of evangelizing and letting people know about our church as well as to know about the Lord. 1976, in January, the congregation approved proceeding with the start of a Bible Institute. The summer of 1976, Chuck and Barb DeSabato, now Dilworth, began a college and career ministry. I mentioned that I'm not picking up everything that ever happened to the church, but I want to pick out individuals and events that might be of significance. And some of you remember Chuck DeSabato. Of course, he went home to be with the Lord many, many years ago. And Barb has since remarried Jimmy Dilworth. But he was my Sunday school teacher when I first came here. He was the first Sunday school teacher I had, Chuck DeSabato. He was I think he was an instructor at Westchester University, a professor there. Delaware County, okay, thank you, Delaware County. Really good teacher, and I appreciated his teaching. He had an impact on me. That's 1976. 1977, third building. So you see that the property has grown in acres. The number of buildings are beginning to grow because of the needs of the church. The church continues to grow. I don't have any numbers of exactly church size during those years, but the church obviously continued to grow and was able to absorb other properties as well as build buildings. So on August 14th of 1977, we had groundbreaking for the new sanctuary that took place that year. In November of 1977, Barbara Mason, a missionary to the Philippines, spoke at the Women's Missionary Fellowship Tea. And there we have her, in the earliest prayer card I had for her. 1978, the new sanctuary was dedicated. So I've got a couple pictures there. That's an artist's rendering. And the next one is, of course, the way it used to look with the wheelchair ramp there. In fact, I think I might have a picture. Yeah, there's the ramp. It's gone now, right? But so, 25 or 50 years from now, when there was a ramp in front of the church, yeah, we have pictures to show that there was indeed a ramp there. But the Lord has provided wonderfully for us to have the elevator, which is a real blessing, I'm sure, to many, many people. So new sanctuary, 1978, the new sanctuary was dedicated. The ramp, of course, was part of that. And then in the late 1978, the property where the Gingerys now live was purchased from a man by the name of Mr. Kressmer. I'm not sure if it was him or someone else, but had said that they'll never sell their property to us. They knew that we were growing as a church, and they just said, we'll never do it, we'll never sell. But the Lord just changed. I'm not sure if it was this man, it might have been, just changed his heart. And he eventually did sell. I think with the understanding that we couldn't occupy it until his wife passed away or something like that. He would sell it to us, but as long as he or his wife were still alive, they would continue to live there. So in 1981, we basically took possession of it. The house that we bought was raised, and we built another home there, but that's where the Gingerys live on that property right now. Okay. Gave Mrs. Kressmer lifetime rights. So as long as she was alive, she continued to live there. Okay. So then in 1981, we took possession of it. So that was just the Lord's doing. Again, as we were able to accumulate these properties, God provided the property, provided the funds. There were times where we borrowed money. I'm trying to remember the details. I know we borrowed from ourselves one time. People either gave a gift or gave a loan to the church, which was repaid with or without interest. We've done that. I think I might have done that to build this building. But God has provided, and we rarely had long-term debt, and praise the Lord for that. That's not the case with many, many churches. 1979, October. Ken and Barb Lynch made their first visit here as an evangelist. Now, he might have visited earlier just as a friend of the ministry, but that's the first time he came here as an evangelist with evangelistic meetings. December, the first issue of Bible Baptist Broadcaster, another publication. You probably don't remember these. They didn't last all that long from time to time, but just an endeavor to reach the community and just to inform the people of Bible Baptist churches what was going on. 1980, September, because of tremendous growth, we began to have 2 morning services. Now that was a hard decision. I don't remember if I was a deacon back then, but I do remember that it was a hard decision to go to 2 services, because when you do that, you almost end up with 2 different congregations. And so if you're the early service congregation, you don't necessarily know the people in the later service. Now, everybody should come Sunday night, but we know that isn't always the case. So you almost develop 2 congregations. But we had to do it because we didn't have the balcony at that time. We were just growing so fast that you couldn't really accommodate people. There are statistics that the people that look at these things put out that when you get to a certain percentage full, people stop coming. They don't all like to sit like this, in the pews next to, maybe family is okay, but other people, we don't necessarily like to do that. So as the church fills up, people tend not to come. Visitors will look and say, oh, it's too crowded. I'm going to find someplace else to go. So we went to two services in the morning. Didn't last forever, but we did do it for a time. 1981, in February, an arsonist broke in and set fire in a downstairs office, causing an estimated $200,000 in smoke damage. I know you can't read that, but that's just an article. I keep stuff. That's just an article that talked about that particular event. Now, most of the damage that was done, as in any fire, was what? Smoke damage. Throughout all of the facilities. Up here, I remember the ceiling, everything white turns smoky gray or black. And so we had to hire a company to come in and clear out all of the, get rid of all the smoke damage. So that was a $200,000 hit. I'm sure insurance covered most of that, but nonetheless, that was that was a challenging time for us as a church as well. The summer of that year, Christian Character Club was developed. There she is again, Mrs. D. I'm sorry she's not here to see all this. But I'm randomly going through pictures, and she's showing up all over the place, which is no surprise to any of us, I know. That she's very involved, and as she's able to today, is still very much involved in our church. But the Christian Character Club program was developed, and it was developed in-house. We had a number of pastors through the summer. I think Roger Brain might have worked on that. I think Ted Meshi worked on that. Help me out. Who? Randy Boston. Anybody else? Jim Wendorf certainly was the one who headed it up. Tom Pollock might have been involved in that as well. So a number of men got together and put together that program. It has gone through perhaps some minor changes and updates through the years, but that's when it was first developed in the summer of 1981. 1982, again, the Lord providing more property for us. In March of that year, the house right next door where Barb Hawk lives was purchased from the Maxley family. Maybe that's who said they would never sell to us. I forget who it was. But anyway, we purchased that property. So you can see us beginning to grow and expand, God providing those things for us. July of 1982, Pastor Dave Natale assumed pastoral duties at Chadds Ford Baptist Fellowship. I tell you, when you hear dates like that, you think, was it really that long ago? 1982. For some of you, you know, that was before you were born. But for many of us, it seems like a long time ago. But faithful minister of the Word of God. In the fall of 1982, the signing ministry began under the direction of Linda Caulfield. When you might remember the Caulfield family. And then also that year, Bible Baptist Bookstore began. That was a little bit more grand. It was a grander presentation back then. It's certainly gotten a little bit smaller through the years, but that's when it began. In 1983, I know you can't see that either, but that's an article that was written about Higher Ground. That was a radio ministry that Pastor Griffith had for a couple of years, several years perhaps. WVCH in Coatesville, Saturday mornings, I forget, 10 o'clock maybe. Dun, 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 dun. You see it start out with the Higher Ground music. And, okay, this said WVCH, I think, in the article, but it might have been WCOJ too, or maybe that changed through the years, I don't know. Anyhow, it was out of Coatesville, and he had opportunity every week to present the gospel. He would have guest speakers sometimes. I know he had interviewed Leo, and different individuals would come on and speak, but just another outreach. So we've got Would You Believe? We've got these magazines, not magazines, the articles being published. We've got the Higher Ground ministry on Saturday morning, so more and more reaching out into the community here of Westchester. 1984, our fourth building. In February of that year, the new gym was completed and ready for use. There you go. 1984. January, August, work teams from the church began converting the multi-purpose building from a gym to all classrooms. That work was done by September. So now the multi-purpose building across here, that now looks like it was after we got done, began the work to put a second floor in, put up walls, build classrooms. Because the school was continuing to grow, we needed those classrooms, and we now had a new gym, so we didn't need to use that as a gymnasium any longer. And that work was done, as I recall, totally by Bible Baptist Church people. I don't think we had any, maybe for some specialized things, but I don't think we had any outside contractors come in for that. That was all the efforts of some of you, perhaps. I know I put a couple of nails in somewhere along the line, or screws. But that was a great effort of expanding the ministry again in another way. And that work was done by September of '84. In fall, we returned to one service, but in the new gym on chairs. So we're still a large church, didn't have air conditioning in here, so we would meet in the gym on chairs. And that was an even greater undertaking than it was in the multi-purpose building with those chairs, similar to the chair, well, probably the same chairs we have today. You stack them up and pinch your finger. A lot of guys have blood blisters, I'm sure, from doing all that work. But again, it was a good time. I mean, just working together, and the reason you have to do it is because the church has gotten so big, and it was a blessing to be able to use the gym for that purpose, to have services there. In fall of that year, the Bible Institute became a daytime program, and Dr. Tom Wolfe was called to be dean of the institute. Recognize him? He still looks pretty much the same. Hair got a little bit white, but still looks pretty much the same. That's Dr. Wolfe. He was called to be the dean of the institute in October of 1984. I need to keep moving here. Run out of time. 1985, Tom and Donna Wolf arrived and began their ministry. 1986, we purchased a Downing Avenue property where the Mosers live. Again, the Lord provided that property as well. In July through September, services returned to the auditorium. Just too hot in the gym, so we returned here. It's kind of tight and cozy, but at least we had air conditioning here in the auditorium. 1987, in the spring of that year, Baptists for Life began meeting here in the Bible Baptist Church auditorium. We planted a church in South Hadley, Massachusetts, with Mike Tardivi. Summer, the first issue of the Pioneer of Bible Baptist Institute. So we have all these publications that are coming out. In September, Jack Clem and his family moved to Westchester to teach in the Institute. In October, we returned to the gym for morning services. It was cooler. We could all fit over there, so it was getting crowded in here, so we moved over there once again. Early summer of 1988, we put a big beam that's right there now, right? Big beam through the church to be able to build the balcony of the auditorium. And then another picture. That's what we have today. And that was the only way they could do it, short of putting a column right here in the middle. They just didn't want to do that for being able to see everybody, be able to see the pulpit. So big beam through the side of the wall. That was a big project. In the spring of 1989, Bible Baptist Institute became Bible Baptist School of Theology, and I've got a couple of pictures of that. That is their first, not their first, but this is just a list of the teachers and the subject matter, the subjects that were available. I know you can't read that, but it lists those that were part of the faculty, which would be Dr. Griffith, Dr. Wolf, Jack Clem, Tom Pollock, Jim Wendorf, Leo D'Arcangelo, Phil Gingery, and then obviously it was a later edition because the Gingery didn't come until '89, but a later edition of this. Here you see Jack Clem and Mike Brown and Mike Smiley and Greg Griffith and who's the guy in the middle? Ray Padgett. Oh, okay. And then later on that year, 1989, Pastor Griffith led a trip to the Holy Land, the church trip to the Holy Land. And in May of that year, the Gingerys arrived. So they've been here since June of 1989. 1991, the bus barn was completed, which basically completed all the major buildings here. And the last is an aerial shot of the facility, which I'm not sure how well you can see it, but if you could picture this building here, which is the largest building there, the one in the forefront, and you can see the gym in the back, and the multi-purpose building. You can see the bus barn in the far back, the original church over here, right to the left of it. So that's a little bit hard to see. I apologize for that. 1992, early June, we celebrated our 25th anniversary. It seemed like just yesterday, right? We celebrated our 25th anniversary. June 28th of that year, 1992, Bible Baptist Church of Upper Darby began under Pastor Steve Lyon. So guess what they're celebrating today? Their 25th anniversary. Isn't that a blessing? Amen. 1993, Pastor Griffith resigned to run Biblical Family Ministries. So from 1993 to 2012, God provided pastors, Martin Macedo from 96 to 2000, Michael Asher from 2003 to 2012. And God provided interim men. Obviously, between those pastors, there were interim times, which, as those of us have gone through it, it's just a challenging time. You wonder what God is doing. You wonder what God's going to provide. If God, how long it's going to take for us to get a new pastor. And obviously, some folks drifted away at that particular time, and I understand that kind of thing happens. But nonetheless, God kept us as a church, and that's what's key here. God kept us as a church, and God provided really good, solid leadership during those interim times. Tom Pollock was the interim pastor for several months. Tom Wolf was the interim pastor for 2 years. These are different interim times, of course. Dr. Richard Harris was interim for 2.5 years. Phil Gingery was our interim for several months, about 5 months. So God provided leadership and stability even during times of instability. And we so much appreciate those that served during that time. July 1st, installation service for Pastor Brabson of 2012. And that doesn't seem like it's, has it been that long, I guess? It seemed like he just got here, but he's been here a long time. We so much appreciate the ministry of our pastor. So along the way, and I don't have photographs of all of these things, but we have had several different music directors. However, this is 50 years now, 50 years of ministry. The number of people that we've had as pastors, as musical directors, as pianists, as organists, has been relatively small. So there's been significant stability, I believe, in the ministry areas of Bible Baptist Church. So music directors along the way, we've had Army DiArcangelo, Jim Buchanan for a time, Terry Gladfilter, Darren Waterbury, and finally Phil Gingery. So 5 music ministers, if you will, during that period of 50 years. Organists. And forgive me if I skip somebody. I know there are many people that have played the organ and play the piano. I mean, I would run out of time to list all those people. But as far as those that had kind of the designation of organist, pianist, whether official or unofficial, the ones that I came up with were Pamela Bagnall, Kathy Speaker, I think, Una Wendorf, and Beverly Halteman. So I may have missed somebody in there, but that's 4, maybe if there's somebody I missed, 5, over 50 years. Same thing on the piano. Phyllis Chamberlain, Dondi Craig Pullen, Lymita Zern, Julie Blackstone. I know there's so many that play the piano. We're blessed with so many. Fred. Tom Bailey, yes, there have been some that have filled in and, kind of waved their, I shouldn't say just waved their arms, filled in. Tom Bailey was one of those that did as well. So, and that reminds us, we're so grateful for folks who are able and willing to fill in, to pitch in, to just take charge of things when there's a need. And they may not feel totally capable, totally called into that particular ministry, but God really has blessed us with so many faithful servants. Other staff members, I'm just going to throw out names and just kind of click your memory about people that have served here in the past. John Garner, Fran Caserta, of course, Leo DiArcangelo, Jim Wendorf, Jerry Evans, Tom Pollock, Jim Reed, Bill Muller, Walt Lawrence, Dirk Crawford, Joe Simpson, I already mentioned Jack Clem, Dave Bagnall, how could we not mention the Douglases, of course the Mosiers today. So these are just some of the people. I know I've missed people, I'm sure I have, but these are some of the names that came to mind, and Phil reminded me of a couple here this morning, of folks that have served at Bible Baptist Church, and we're so grateful for the faithful servants that God has brought our way. And then I'll close with just a few more pictures that remind us of our past. There's a group of men. You probably can't see clearly who they are, but some of the names, I see George Chambers there in the front. I see Dave Obinger. So I know many of you remember Dave Obinger. Remember his handshakes? He's probably still doing the same thing out there in Indiana, wherever he is. Jack Conrad, Norm Timmons on the right side, Mike Bernard, Fred Lewis, that's me in the middle there, Jim Reed, Tom Wolfe, Dick Shank, far left in the back, if you can just barely see him there. I don't remember what this occasion was. We just kind of get together as men. Next picture. Lowell Barr, most of you won't remember Lowell Barr, but he was very much of a leader in our church. He was the chairman of the deacon board. He was a Sunday school teacher, and his family. He worked for Boeing, and when they moved out to the West Coast, he and his family moved out there. Mr. and Mrs. Brown. I remember Mrs. Brown. I don't remember Mr. Brown, but I remember Mrs. Brown. Park Dagg, very much, he was an early deacon, very much part of the startup of Bible Baptist Church. There's the Army again, but there's the DiArcangelo family. Look at that. You know, Don, that's the biggest laugh so far. He's speechless. How can you be speechless when you're using your hand? Yeah. So anyway, that was Don in a few earlier years, but still serving, driving bus back then, still driving bus today. Federoffs, they moved to New Jersey, but they were a very active family here in the church in the early years. Higgins family, Marvin, Betty. And 2 of their boys, they've had another son since then. Recognize the Howarths? There's Dawn again. Jenkins Waterbury. John, is John here today? There he is. John Williams' family. Masons again. Oh. Pattersons. Is Hank here today? Not here this morning. Parletts. Hey, Paul's here. Hey, Paul. Most of you probably won't, well, some of you won't remember Paul Snyder, but Paul was, again, very active here at the church as a deacon, served many, many years. Also used to climb trees. Even as an elder statesman, he climbed trees, and that's what he did. Tarbottons. That's one Rotary family. And there's another one. Oh. We're missing a baby, but most of them are there. Again, Ray Wolfrey was a deacon early on. I served with him for a time. And, do I see Fran here today? Oh, he's not raising his hand. People are pointing at him. That's Fran. And that's it. So that's what I got, and I'm out of time. But it was a blessing to be able to go through some of the archives and be reminded myself of how God has blessed us as a church. And hopefully that's an encouragement to you as well, to really look at the facilities and all that we have here as an ongoing blessing from God. Bit by bit, as we were able to buy things, absorb things, care for things. It's not just a matter of buying stuff. You've got to be able to take care of it. And God has, as we were able to do that, provided for us, and sometimes in miraculous ways. So just a little bit of look back at how we all looked in years past, but also to remember God's blessing along the way. And let's never forget that. And as people come into the church and come new to the church, we don't want to just hammer them with this stuff. But over time, people need to be reminded of how God has blessed us as a church and provided for us along the way and continues to bless us. We're not just looking back. We're going to look at how we are today and what God has for us in the future. But we're so grateful to the Lord and for all his many blessings. So let's close our time in a word of prayer. Dear Father, we thank you so much for Bible Baptist Church. Lord, we thank you for the servants that you've sent our way, for the many blessings that we have enjoyed as a church, for, Lord, you bringing us through some very difficult times that we've suffered as a church. But, Lord, you've always been gracious to us, and we are grateful for the things that you've done for us and the things that you've given to us. So, Lord, help us not to live in the past, not to dwell in the past, but to remember the past, to remember the things that you have done for us and your graciousness to us. So thank you again, Lord, for this look back. I pray, Lord, for your blessing continued upon the services of today as we look at how you're blessing us today and what the future might be for us as well. Well, thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.